Hello, Tara. Thanks again for joining me on my podcast. And today we're going to be talking about almost everything about logos. Well, not almost everything, but we're going to talk about how we design logos for clients. How we get the brief, how we charge, how we do them, how we make them, how we supply them, what happens to them, what makes us bang our heads against the brick wall, and what works. And wrapped into all of this is something very important, which is your video course on how to create a logo. What's it called?
It's How to Create a Logo, a Beginner's Course.
Which I said last time was for beginners and intermediates and some professionals, I would say.
Okay.
And you can find that course, as last time I gave the URL, at www.robcubbon.com/logo course. That's all one word, logo course. Or on Tara's site, you can go to graphicdesignblog.co.uk, and she has an ad for that. She has a sidebar link to the course there. The course is actually hosted on Udemy. And we have, Tara has given us a special treat. Thank you, Tara.
You're welcome.
She's set up a 50% off coupon code, which we will give you at the end of this podcast. And I'm really sorry to say that. I know it's a terrible trick to keep you listening, but if you're listening on the podcast, just slide that little slider right up to the end, and I'll give it to you then. If you're watching on YouTube, same again, slide the little slider to the end, and you'll get the coupon code. Sorry, we can't give you the coupon code now. Actually, we haven't sorted it out yet, but but we will do. And thank you very much again, Tara, for joining me today.
Thanks, Rob.
On my podcast. Thank you. And where shall we begin? We'll begin with client communication. You've just been asked to create a logo. What's the next stage?
I mean, I then obviously want to take a brief from the client, and you can either do that by email, in person, or on Skype. And I tend to have a set of questions that I use, unless the client's really experienced and they're used to briefing design. But apart from that, I'll have a set of questions that hopefully gives me a lot of information about the type of thing they're looking for. And usually as well, when you start asking those questions, you get more bits coming in through there as well.
Absolutely. And I assume these questions are in the course.
Oh yeah, I've actually you see a live brief in the course. So I've actually taken a client, you see me talking to them on Skype, but I also give a download that's got all the questions that I generally use. I mean, is that the sort of thing you do as well?
It is, but I don't have all the questions written down, which I should do, and I'm already seeing how sensible that is, but I should imagine it's something along the lines of, who are your target market? What's the product? What's the company? The target market, etc. And have you anything else to add to the conversation you have with the client at this stage?
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest things for me probably is you really want to find out the sort of things they like, because sometimes you find the words they use, you don't interpret them the same as they do. So if they say, I want something that shows this great quality, and then really they're thinking of a logo that looks like McDonald's, the two of you have got just not quite, getting on the same wavelength. So if you can get them to find examples of the type of logos they like, or the type of logos that give the feel that they're looking for, I think that's a really big help.
That's very true, because one person's quality can be sort of Lindt chocolates, and another person's quality can be sort of Dior or Chanel or something like that. So there's sans serifs, the scripts, and there's serifs in there. Getting them to identify some other thing that they like is a great help. Anything else?
I mean, I like to ask them who their competitors are, because I think, obviously you want to know what they're competing with, and also, sometimes they've got a unique thing that's slightly different to their competitors, so that gives them a little bit of an edge that you could maybe sort of pull out as well. And I also like to ask them sort of for words that kind of make them sort of describe their company, like, is it brash, is it quick? But again, you need to back that up with those examples again, I think, because you could present a logo for someone and, you try out, because I always start in black and white myself, but I don't present those to the client. So if you give them, say, you're thinking, oh, this would look fantastic in purple. I don't know why purple, but you show that to the client. And although they'd perhaps love that logo, you didn't realise they absolutely hated purple. And I have had actually people say to me, I hate this colour. So whatever you'd have done in that colour, chances are they'd have hated it.
I'm really glad we got onto this, because that was one of the questions I was going to be asking you, because I remember reading on David Airy's blog, and for anyone who doesn't know, David Airy, AIREY.com, very well respected graphic designer and somebody who specialises on logos and identities. He actually, I remember reading on his blog saying that he always shows them in black and white.
All right.
And I tried that once.
Yeah.
And it didn't work.
What did they say?
Well, they didn't like any of them because they were all in black and white. And I found I do try to add the colour on. We're getting ahead of ourselves here, because we're going to talk about presenting to the client later. But it's an important point at this stage of talking to the client as well, to find out the colours that they like, because we both agree that you should present the logo with the colour. So yeah, and if they don't like purple, it is true. I mean, you've just got to accommodate what they like, and if they don't like purple, a purple logo is not going to work.
However right you think it is, they're not going to have it.
However marvellous the logo is, if it's purple, it doesn't work with this client. So it's a very good point. And I would add to this that the amount of communication at this stage is actually very important. The most you can get from them, because they might not realise what they have in their brain. That is necessary to tell you. They might think things about their company that is at the back of their mind and is obvious to them, and they might not think about telling you about them. So the more you can engage with them in conversation about their company and their values and their customers and everything like that, the better at this stage, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I actually had a student say to me, they'd obviously been and tried to get a brief from a client, and the client had just said, I don't know. I don't know. And they said to me, like, what do you do, when you get that? And the only thing I can think of that I've tried in the past is they obviously come back with all I don't know. So all you can do is go away and then you answer the questions almost on their behalf, and then fire it over to them almost like it's a proposal. This is my suggestion that we do this, something along these lines. And hopefully they either sense, oh no, then they say, I hate that. And then they a bit more forthcoming, or they say, yeah, I think you're on. That's the sort of thing I'm thinking.
That's another that is another good advice, actually. If you're not getting anything from the client, it's in the discussion stage, you can suggest things and they say no, and that can save you a lot of time. That's a really good point as well. So anything more about the communication stage, the brief stage?
I don't think so. I basically, like you said before, I think you just try and get as much information as you can. And I'll always sit there and take notes. If you're doing it in person, obviously I'll sit there and take notes, because when you look back at that, you'll always find there'll be something in there, even if you didn't really notice it at the time, that you can sort of, spark an idea off.
Absolutely. If there is any written correspondence as well, I find it very important to keep that to the fore. Because you can forget things that they've said to you in a couple of emails back as well. So if you're talking about conversations, take notes and keep those notes safe and refer to them as you go along in the process. Very good. So now should we go on to the actual?
The process. I mean, I don't know if you do the same thing as me, but once I've got all that brief from the client, I tend to start mind mapping, and I'll just do that generally in paper. I mean, I did use sort of mind mapping software, but I tend to do that more for organizing kind of business thoughts rather than, sketching out logo things. So yeah, I'll just start off with that central theme or whatever it is and start, trying to come up with associations and stuff. And I do pictures and words, that sort of thing. Is that the sort of thing you do?
Yep, you're absolutely right. Do the mind mapping with your hands at this stage. I think because it's a logo, I think you're better off using your hands at this stage. I think you probably, again, you're doing a little bit more than I would on the mind mapping stage, but I think you've got this absolutely spot on. So what are the best things that come out from this stage, or does it depend on the logo you're doing at the time?
Yeah, I mean, what I've just forgotten to tell you is before that, I actually do a bit of research, which I totally forgot. Because obviously the client's given you they've given you a few logo ideas. So I usually grab those and grab a few others that I'll find as well. Yeah, and start with a brainstorming. And now I've forgotten your question. What was your question?
That's okay. Actually, what you're saying is very important as well. Researching into into the area, is a very good idea. And my question was, in the mind mapping stage, what do you discover? Is it this, or does it depend on the actual logo you're doing at the time?
Yeah, I mean, totally it depends on the logo, but I just tend to find that by doing that, you'll pull out thoughts that you wouldn't otherwise. So obviously you'll come out with all the obvious things, and sometimes the obvious things are the best. But I'll also find by doing little doodles and stuff, sometimes something looks like something. It's not necessarily that it's a word association, but like I use an example, say for example, a dog's wagging tail almost looks like a smile. Do you know what I mean? It's
Yeah,
just the
yeah.
shape of something looks like something else. So
Yeah, no,
yeah,
that sort of association is the
yeah,
classic reason why you do this mind mapping on hand on a piece of paper.
yeah.
You can, you, you can even use your left hand if you want, and well, in my case, my right hand because I'm left-handed. But there can be ideas that come out at this stage that can be winning ideas. And another thing I think we've forgotten at this stage as well, I want to go back, is to get the name of the company right and make sure you've got the spelling right.
Totally.
And
Yeah.
there might be issues with uppercase and lowercase and camel case and what have you. So obviously you got that bit right as well, and you're doing the mind mapping, and also at this stage you do something that I don't so much, and that is mood boarding.
Yeah, I don't do every single logo. I tend to do it if there's a bigger budget in a logo and there's enough time in a logo, or if I'm getting totally stuck.
Right.
So I do the mind map, and
Mhm.
sometimes that just, you get a pool of ideas from that mind map. But if I'm kind of struggling or I've got enough time that I'm able to do it, I like to make a mood board.
Okay, explain your process of mood boarding.
Yeah, mood board. I'll tend to, whatever the subject is, I'll tend to go and buy a stack of magazines on that sort of area or within that kind of niche that I'm working on. Or if there's no sort of magazines, I'll look for bits online. I mean, you can do it digitally or physically. I prefer physically if I can. And basically, I'll tear bits out of magazines, stick them on a big sheet of like A2 or something paper, and I just find by doing that, you'll start to get a think, oh, okay, fairly simple typefaces work for this sort of area. And, oh, those shapes are quite nice. I wonder if I can somehow bring in that kind of shape. There might be a little graphic or something. Maybe I can bring that in somewhere. Or some of the colours, if they haven't been specific on colours, maybe it gives me a feel for the overall colours that I might want to use.
Yep, and this all feeds in to the research stage as well, but a mood board is slightly different as well. I mean, if you've really got time and budget, you actually show the mood boards to the client and so does this work for you? And it can be anything. It can be pictures that go along with
Yeah.
their company colours, typography. all sorts of things, and it is a really great stage to do if you're doing a proper identity for a relatively large organisation. And going back to this stage of mind mapping, I think we may explain what we mean by that as well, because we haven't talked about sort of what sort of paper and implement of if that's the right word.
Yeah, I'm really high tech, and I use a layout pad and like whatever pen is handy.
Right,
So it might be a felt tip, a
right,
biro,
right,
anything. How about you?
Actually, more or less the same as you, I have to say. It would be something that's handy. I mean, I guess it would help actually if you could use different types of Conte crayons, different types of felt tip, different types of biro. They all could help if you're stuck to try and mix things up a bit as you're scribbling around with the word trying to find the logo. So anything else on the mind mapping, mood boarding, sketching front?
I mean, only that when I'm sketching, actually for the logo course, I tried to break that down even more. I don't want to give that all away,
Right. No, fair enough.
but what I've done is, I don't think you realise, you probably don't realise either when you do it yourself, but you sit there and you sketch, and then because you've been doing it for so long, you don't think, oh, okay, I do this type of, okay, give good example. I might like use the initials of the company as one idea, but you don't actually think of it methodically when you're sketching. You'll just think, oh, I wonder if I could do this.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I think try out different areas, not just sticking to typography. You try different things.
That's a good idea. Actually, there's another good point to mention that I'll see if you agree with my take on logos. I believe that there's 3 types of logos, maybe 4, but one is the word of the company, and that's it. Another one is a mark, like Apple has an apple with a thing, and Nike has a tick, etc. And the third one is the mixture of the two, the word and the mark. And sometimes the mark can be the initials of the word. So it always, have those thoughts of the different various logos in your mind as well. You've done the sketches, you've done your mind mapping, and maybe you've got 4 or 5 different ideas.
No, I'll generally have a lot more.
Okay.
Some might be complete, throw them in the bin jobs.
Right, fair enough.
I will have sheets of layout paper with scribbles. So I'll generally take some of those scribbles and I go around with a highlighter and I say, oh yeah, that's got potential.
Right.
No, that hasn't. So I've got all these layout pads with all these highlighter pen on it. And then I'll generally kind of refine those down a bit, but I'll still have quite a few ideas.
Right.
Scan them in, and then I start drawing them up in Illustrator. So for me, it's like start with loads, narrow it, and keep narrowing it.
Okay, that's interesting because I wouldn't take so many into Illustrator. Obviously, if any of my clients are listening, they obviously will realise they'll get a better logo from you than me. But you would take quite a few, you scan in quite a few, maybe 10 or 15, and put them into Illustrator.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll get into Illustrator, start drawing them up in black and white like we mentioned before.
Yeah.
And then I'll think, oh, okay, I don't like that one. That doesn't really work.
Right.
Yeah. Then narrow that down again, and I'll start colouring them up. Or I might even start drawing up some of those ones I've scanned in. I think, yeah, that's not even halfway through it. I think, yeah, that's not working.
Yeah.
And kind of abandon it.
Yeah. Okay, so as we should always say, you really always should design a logo, should create a logo in Illustrator.
Yes.
Or freehand, if anyone's still using that.
I mean, there's a program as well, isn't there? The Inkscape. If somebody can't afford Illustrator, I think you can use.
That's correct. Good thing. But the thing is, it's vector. It's vector, and some of these sketches that you have will involve a font, and you will choose a kind of base font to work your logo from, and can talk a bit about your process of that?
Yeah, well, I'll generally sort of, obviously when I do my scribbles, you're kind of, my scribbles aren't very great. I mean, I'm not going to win any awards for them, but I try and get an idea. So, okay, it's going to be a fairly simple font in my drawing. And then I'll go look through the fonts I've got,
Mm-hmm.
or I'll go look online for something I think might be suitable.
Right.
Yeah, and try and match it up with what I'm doing. Do you do the same?
Yeah, yes, absolutely, and then I will change the font to outlines and edit the letters in a way that goes along with the sketch, or I
Yeah.
think looks better. You know, you don't want to give your client the name of his logo in Helvetica.
Yeah.
There you go, and that wouldn't. Although some people have evidently done that, but
It's not look good.
it can work.
Yeah.
But yes, that's generally the process to spend quite a bit of time in Illustrator, getting the logo looking exactly how you write it, and the kerning at this stage is extremely important. You do need to blow it up huge and make those tiny adjustments with the letters, because this really is an incredibly important part of the company's identity.
I mean, do people know what kerning is? Do you think?
I think you should give them a description of it.
Thanks. Drop myself in that one. Yeah, kerning is it's when you go. Oh God, I'm going to explain this wrong now. Two letters side by side. It's the space in between the two of them, and
Correct.
obviously you can tighten that up or
Yeah.
space it out. And spacing is obviously the amount of space between the whole word, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or tracking. Sometimes it's referred to as tracking. It would be the whole word, whereas kerning would be the space between the two letters within a word. We all do this without thinking about the words, and then we talk about it with other people, and we find, hey, we've all got different words for these things. Great. So, how many options do you have at this stage?
Now, some people are going to shoot me for this because it really depends on the client, but I will probably present between 3 and 6. And a lot of clients are saying that is totally wrong. You should only show 3. But I've actually worked in agencies, both years ago when I was full time and also freelancing agencies, and some of them literally send out pages. You'll get some that only send out a few, but you'll get some that send out pages of options.
Right. Well, I'm not going to shoot you, Tara. I agree. I am on the less is more stage. I would have 3. I would prefer a number around 3 of the initial options to show the client. I think my experience has been masses of options can confuse people and leads to a longer development stage. Obviously, everyone's got their own opinion on this, but I largely agree with you, Tara.
Good.
So, how do you present these 3 or 6 options to the client?
Well, I mean, obviously, if it's in person, I'll take them in, and most people nowadays, because I've worked with clients for a fair amount of time, I won't do all the fancy, probably putting them on boards. I would do the first time or first few times I went in, but I'd just take in sheets of paper with the logos on, show them if I'm going in person. If it's online and I'm going to send them by email, I'll generally send them in a PDF, but I'll put 1 per page and I'll number them at the bottom. So it'll be like, I'll put option 1, option 2. So then when they ring me up or whatever, or they email me back and they say, oh, I really like option 2, I know exactly which one they're talking about.
Fantastic. I think sending them an email, which is what I usually do, I do exactly the same thing. I send them in a PDF. I send them quite small on a landscape paged PDF, and number the pages with a number very small in the corner, of course, not distracting, so they see a huge, great white expanse of page with the logo smallish in the middle, so there's less
Yeah.
distraction, and they can easily say, I hate number 1, I hate number 2, and number 3.
They should be saying they hate them.
Be positive. Number 1 is the one, and I don't
Yeah.
want any changes, and go with that one. It's
That's
brilliant.
right.
You're a genius. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. I get that a lot.
I bet you do.
Thank you so much. So I think that's a very good. Don't put a bunch of JPEGs in your email, and they'll say I like the one that's second from top, and you know that would be a nightmare. Now we get the feedback, obviously, from the client, and this depends on the client whether they might have liked them. Usually, it's kind of in between. You know, it's something like number 2. We like that second one, but can you do this? Can you do that? So how do you find it going after this stage, Tara?
Yeah, I mean, well, obviously the worst case scenario is, like you said, they hate them all. That's the worst. Rarely happens, fortunately. So usually it's like you say, it's like, oh, I like number 1, but I really like the typeface you've used on option 2.
Yeah.
Can you try putting it together?
Yes, yeah, that happens a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you've got to go and you might find that what they've asked for, go you thought about it but you didn't like it so much, but I always find that you just try and work through their suggestions, and I find you can surprise you. You don't want to get on your high horse too much at this stage and say, oh, what do they know, and they haven't chosen the one that you set your heart on. You shouldn't set your heart on one, but sometimes it happens, and you have to just work through their feedback.
Yeah, I mean, if I think it's an awful idea, I'll say, I will say, oh, I'm not sure if that'll work because, but I'll try it and I'll show you.
Yeah.
And then I might also try something else and show them
that
I think will work as well.
Yeah, I think sometimes they do, clients will, they haven't been designing logos for 20 years and they will, not think through things perhaps as much as a designer would. So there's some good advice there from Tara on how to handle some of this feedback. So this may carry on for a few stages. It hopefully won't carry on ad infinitum. What would you like to say about the final stages and the sign off?
Well, final stage is you make sure, if you're talking from a practical point of view, you obviously make sure that logo, before you send it out to them, is all split to paths, so no one's going to end up opening it and the font's not there. Things like that. You make sure you supply them. I'll try and make sure I supply them in several different versions. What I mean by that is like a JPEG.
Mm-hmm.
I'll supply them like an AI, an Adobe Illustrator file, a few different versions, so that they've got one if they're going to send one out to a printer. They've got one if they're going to use it in Word, that type of thing.
Yeah.
You do the same?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I would say I usually send them a small RGB JPEG about that size. Obviously, if you're listening on a podcast, you won't know what I'm talking about. 80 pixels wide, because that would fit in a Word document and it'll fit in an email footer. And a large one, still RGB. I find that clients won't really understand CMYK. A large one for their records, and usually I'm doing the print for I'm making business cards for them anyway. So I'd probably I don't often supply CMYK vector files. I usually just keep them on file, actually, because I've got a relationship with the client. But if you're just doing this logo and nothing else, you really must supply the Illustrator files, even if they don't know what they are.
Yeah, I mean, I'll sometimes supply it because they might want to do something in the press or something like that. They might be doing an advertorial or something like that, so I supply it to them.
Yeah.
Because if they're going to go elsewhere anyway, they're going to ask me for it.
Yeah, For sure. It's very,
And I've got a pretty good relationship with most. So
yeah, no, that's very, very good advice. Excellent. Did we do what to do in the rare cases they don't like any options?
no, we didn't.
Shall we
Go
do
on,
it?
you first. What do you do?
Okay, what do we do in the rare cases when they don't like any options? Well, I guess it's what we were talking about earlier. You give them more options and see what they say. Let me think. It's just happened to me so rarely. I can.
Oh.
I think the negative criticism you get from their feedback tells you loads, because they'll say it's too brash, it's too in your face, it's too modern, and then you know what to come up with next. What about you, Tara?
Yeah, I'm pretty similar. That if they say they hate them all, I mean, if it was a new client and I think I've gone totally on brief and they're just saying to me we don't like them, as in there's no real why we don't like them.
Mm.
Well, I think in that case you have to think, should I try again, or is it just that we're not going to be able to work this together? So I tend to think either yes, I think I can work with this person. They're giving me feedback that it kind of makes sense. Yes, I'll have another go at it. Or if they're just saying no, we hate them, but they can't tell me why and can't give me any more, how I can improve it. And I think they're working. Then sometimes I think you just have to sort of be polite and say, I don't think it's going to work.
Right. I think that's a really good point, Tara. I mean, just generally speaking, if you just started out with a client and you get a few red flags, sometimes it is so much better off to cut your losses and thinking, I can't work with this person. It's just better if we just leave it at that. And I don't want to get onto the contracts and stuff. We can talk about this another time. But yeah, I mean, if you're not going to get any decent feedback, and then it's best to call it a day. It doesn't often happen,
Yeah.
but you will actually save time and money by getting rid of certain clients, and that's just the reality of it. Great. So let's talk about money, Tara.
Well, I mean, when I quote, well, some clients I've been working for years, you don't even hardly have to quote. But if we're talking about a new situation, we've got someone new come through to us. What I generally do is, first of all, I want to know roughly what they want designing logo wise, because I don't want to quote for a logo and it turns out they want some really elaborate, illustrative, that's going to take me ages to draw. So I'll find out roughly what they want, not the full questionnaire. And then I'll try and work out how long I think it will take me to do that. And obviously building into that, you need to build into that amends. And obviously you're going to build it in if you've got to go and see them, because obviously that's going to take a big chunk of your time. And then I'll times that by an hourly rate that I want to set. So they don't know. I'm not going to tell them, oh, I'm going to spend 3 days or 2 days or whatever I'm going to spend on it. But I'll just, times that for myself against a roughly hourly rate, and I'll put that in a quote to them.
Yeah, that's by and large what I do. It's by and large what I do for every job. Basically, is think about how much time it is and multiply it by my hourly rate, and that's it. However, logos being logos, they're 10 times more complicated than anything else. I find is because why do they want the logo? I mean, it's a bit of a red flag. I find. I don't know what you think. If someone rings me up and says I want a logo, because what do you want it for? I mean, it's more often with me. I have to say that I design a logo for a website.
Right.
The client wants a website. They might want other things further down the line, but the logo is within that. So I charge accordingly. Well, I have had this before, where somebody's had an idea down the local bar the night before that they want to start up a company, and phoning me up saying, "Can you do me a logo? How much does it cost?" And it's just it's like what we were talking about, with red flags. So you've got the price worked
Yep.
out, and they've agreed with you. And if it's a new client, do you do 50 before, 50 afterwards?
Do you know, I've never actually taken a deposit,
Really?
but that's probably because I'm stupid, and also because the majority of stuff I've done for kind of local companies, and I know that probably doesn't make any difference. But I have had people online, and I've met them, and this is probably crazy of them as well. But you get a vibe. I get a vibe from them, which is again totally mad. But I have started putting it on new quotes actually. That
Right.
if I go out now, I put a type on. Luckily, I've not actually been stung. Once I got stung when a company I did quite a bit of work for. I didn't lose a lot of money, but they went bust.
Right.
So
Well,
I've only in 8 years I've got stung once really. But
right.
if I was starting up now and doing it for a lot of companies I didn't know,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, I would advise people to do that simply because if you're getting a logo request from the internet, it could be someone halfway around the world. It could be someone from your country but a fair distance away.
Yeah.
I think for the nature of that, it's just the beginning. It's the first job. I really think a 50% up front will be worth it. And then if they don't want to pay it, you've got to ask yourself now why do they not, if they're not sure about it, then why is that? So I think that's a good idea.
So do you do that with your regulars as well?
No, I don't. I do it very little as well, Tara.
Yeah.
I got to say, but I obviously do it a little bit more than you. Yeah, I mean, I think it's different. I know a lot of designers are very, I've done surveys of this, and a lot of them are very, very forthright about their 50-50 rule, and won't do anything unless they. I think it all depends on their experience. If they've been stung, as you say, you haven't been. I have been a little bit more than you, and I think that it's your experience. It will always colour the way you deal with these situations. But
I've probably been lucky because the people that have found me online, even they've probably been fairly local, or even if they're a couple of hours out, they've actually come and met me, sort of thing. I guess they wanted to suss me out. So, or I've had long conversations on the phone, and they've not been like, say, a one-man band so much,
right.
Which I know that doesn't mean anything, but
No, I know. I think one-man bands can be they can be more dodgy. To be fair, I mean, a large organisation, if it's got more than 10 employees, I think, apart from if it goes bust, which you've had, and that can happen to anyone, but it's genuinely better, I think, if you have a larger organisation. One-man bands can be fantastic, don't get me wrong, it can be great, it can be really creative work, but they're more likely to renege on things than larger organisations.
yeah.
Is there anything else, do you think?
There's only one thing when I'm quoting, and I don't know if you do this as well. I obviously try and protect myself because, like we said before, logos, you get tons and tons of amends.
Yeah.
So I tend to put something in there just saying either this includes reasonable amends, or I'll say this includes 3 sets of changes. That doesn't actually mean I'm necessarily going to charge them if they give me 4 or 5 sets of changes, but it means that when things get a bit, if they start getting stupid, I can actually sort of say, oh, just to let you know, obviously I've spent a lot of time with this. As per our agreement, any further amends will be extras.
Yeah, I think that's quite important as well. I've got to say, it hasn't happened much with me with logos, but if you just Google, I don't know if you do this, but if you Google graphic design contract, you can find these contracts online, and you amend them by putting your name in, the client's name, and the job in question logo, and there it will have it somewhere in the contract. It'll say you shouldn't do too many amends, and you can add in that bit if you want, and it'll also say that another good thing to have in a contract is if for any reason either party requires to pull out of the contract, you should be paid pro rata for the amount of work you've done. So if you're 50% down the line and suddenly the client's we don't want a logo anymore, sorry.
Yeah.
You can say in the contract, can you just pay me half of what we agreed? In which case, nothing, because you've got the 50 first. But you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Yes, very good advice again.
Actually, and you also want to tell them your payment terms. So you want to tell them, if I do this job for you, I expect you to pay me within however many days you expect them to pay you with.
Yeah, or good advice as well. Actually, I usually do the 30-day one, but a lot of people say a week, or
Yeah.
But it is different depending on the country you're from and the business culture that you have.
And they won't pay you anyway when they say.
And we're operating in a recession at the moment.
Yeah.
And phoning up to get invoices settled is all part of the fun of our job, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
So, Tara, is there anything else you'd like to say about?
I think we've covered everything. Or have we missed anything?
Well, I don't think we covered everything because
no, well, obviously not.
Obviously in your course, all these things have gone into much greater detail, and it is a really. I mean, I cannot stress enough how difficult. Maybe I shouldn't say this, but I think logo design is a very difficult part of our job, and I think your course is really good.
Thank you.
Honestly, as I said last time, I do. But it is great because on that course, Tara speaks to a client live. You see the client's face and you see Tara's face. And
sorry about that.
And it's great. It really is. I said this last time. I really enjoyed that part of it. But the whole of the rest of it, with all your advice about mood boards and the sketching and the Illustrator work as well. And it is a lot of information. It's all important stuff, and it really is excellent. So, if you're listening on YouTube or the podcast, then we'll give you your 50% off coupon for Tara's course. But in the meantime, Tara, you can be found at, of course, graphicdesignblog.co.uk.
Yeah.
And thank you very much for coming along, Tara.
Thank you very much.
So if you want to take Tara's course for $22 instead of $45, here is the coupon code. First of all, you want to go along to the course at Udemy, and you can find that by going to robcubbon.com/logo course. And then when you're at the How to Design a Logo, a Beginner's course, Tara's course on Udemy, you can enter the coupon code, or what they call a redemption code, of Rob Cubbon 22. So that's my name, ROBCUBBON 22 because it's $22 you're going to be paying. For that you'll get Tara's logo course, which has 41 lectures, 2.5 hours of Tara's video tutoring. The course has a 5-star rating on Udemy after 28 reviews. And it has about 900 to 1,000 students on the course. It's a living, breathing course. Anyone can leave a comment, and they always do, and Tara responds to each comment individually. So if you have any problems with the course, you can, of course, ask Tara a question. It has a 30-day money-back guarantee on it as well, so if you're not happy, you can always get your money back. So please go to robcubbon.com/logo course and enter the redemption code Rob Cubbon 22. Thank you very much.